Hola, me llama Sally. I live in Montana, so I shouldn't be speaking Spanish, but I introduced myself that way because of my health problems that symptoms started from in mine and offspring's lives after a trip to Nicaragua, a missionary trip to Nicaragua for a month. If you haven't seen any of my videos, I am a patient with Morgellons, and that's why I do this video from bed, because sometimes it's extremely difficult to hold my head up for very long. Sometimes I can, long enough, a few minutes to make a video. Sorry, I've got a real bad headache. And pressure. You can see the pressure in my head because I'm doing this in my videos a lot. So I'm going to act and try not to. I wanted to talk today about, if I haven't lost you already, a little more details of the loss of the life of my firstborn and only born son. So I went on a missionary trip in 1993 to Nicaragua, to Lake Nicaragua, for a month. Some of the kids on that trip were sent back with 104 plus temps. We were moved actually to another facility. But we still lived around Lake Nicaragua for a month. So I get home and I get pregnant. I still have my senior year to do. I could have graduated early, but, you know, the fear of Christianity, I was kept home for another year and I got pregnant. I was so not ready to be a parent. Didn't know I would, you know, after my daughter, never be able to conceive after that, or might have changed my mind. But I decided to have the child and give him up for adoption to my aunt and uncle that were unable to conceive. They had been missionaries and had adopted a child from Nepal and one from Korea. And they didn't actually end up conceiving, basically, when Josiah was brought home from the hospital. And during that pregnancy, I believe from my first ultrasound, there was a mysterious white spot, benign tissue, they called it, because they didn't know what it was. Nothing to worry about. Okay. And he moved to Oklahoma so they could do their second year of school, missionary school, which I later completed that program. I was denied Social Security disability round 2 because of my education, which is super unfortunate. Because it was graphic design before Photoshop came out, which is obsolete now, and theology school, which is pretty much obsolete, especially if you get a condition like this. Definitely not something a lot of people make money off of. And those that do don't really seem to share it with the sick so much, besides a couple. Anyways, that was besides the point. Sorry, you have to pardon me. As I watch my videos, I realize, and I'm going to illustrate this sometime, my language is a whole bunch of sentences and constant sidebars that cut each other off and don't finish, and it's really difficult. I don't often complete sentences or points or stories, and that's why my videos get to be really long, and so I apologize. Not going into sidebars. Not going. Josiah. So they lived in Tulsa, and he was a little over a year when they moved to Siberia, Russia to be missionaries. They had, you know, their physicals plus the vaccines before they moved over there. And regardless of vaccines, Josiah got sick shortly after they moved there. And when I look at pictures of that phase, he looked very extremely anemic. I also have been showed through tests, through Western medicine, that my B vitamins were low and were given GIVEN B shots and D shots because of those low panels for years. Sorry to emphasize that. Some whack job of a doctor, I got to hear from my attorney, said I was giving myself B shots. And they had the rest of some weird story made up. I don't know where they got that. It was all news to me. Nothing I've ever thought about doing. Moving on. Josiah looked really anemic. They didn't know what was wrong with him. They thought he had meningitis, but in Russia, they, didn't have the best medical reputation in Siberia. And the missionary organization flew him to Helsinki to get this heart tumor operated on. They get him in Helsinki, they fast him for a day, got him all ready for surgery, they open him up, and what looks like rat lungworm had taken over the body of my 20-month-old son. I gave him up with the agreement that it would be an open adoption with them being in the family. It was part of my decision to do that. Had I known I wouldn't conceive, I would have probably rethought that choice. That I'd never have another son or any other child besides my daughter. So they open him up and find that infection and growths had spread all through his body and particularly into his brain. His life wasn't able to be saved, and Josiah passed away at 20 months old on an operating table in Helsinki, Finland. It's interesting that I remember the details of that. It was really odd back then, and they really didn't know a lot about it. Well, quite unfortunately, their daughter that was born healthy and was healthy until she developed neurological symptoms at crawling ages, so I'm guessing around 8 months old or so. They called her Sidewinder because half of her body wasn't keeping up. She got sicker and ended up living the rest of her years out as a paraplegic. Because of their genetic markers, they wanted to believe it was Kavanaugh's. But what's really interesting is that when I saw the story of Sam, and I wish I could remember his last name, from Australia, that ate the snail in Australia and went into a coma and was in a wheelchair as a paraplegic. They will, even beyond that, because they don't have speaking abilities and things. You can read about him if you look up Angiostrongylis, and this video didn't start the way the other one did. I believe that besides any viruses that can be behind it all, and I did have mono on my sports trip in high school before my tick bite in Arkansas. I believe strongyloids very well may play a huge role, and fungus as well. So those are some things to look into if you're new with this. So Josiah's adopted sister passed at about 6 or 8 years old or something in between those years. Looking just like that kid did from Australia. I don't know what to say. Sad. It's sad what's going on with this coronavirus, but it's really frustrating for those of us that have lost everything and gotten sicker and sicker and sicker over every single year. Infectious disease, but basically the good people in Missoula, Montana have put a nail in the coffin for me concerning Western medicine. You can have a head full of what looks exactly like a manifestation of tinea for years, and you can't even in America get a KOH scraping. It's out of control. I could go back to Nicaragua where I got sick and go into any clinic and get automatic, accurate diagnostics and treatment in a third world country, but not in America. Wow. I hope this coronavirus really doesn't become a huge outbreak, and I hope that lives aren't lost. I'm against that. I do this for my daughter's life more than anything, who's been put in the ER with some crazy misdiagnoses, like hand, foot, and mouth disease, when it might very well be a Bartonella rash. I have all the symptoms of Lyme and Bartonella. My Western blot was inconclusive, meaning that something had to have shown up on it to get it in that mid-range. And that's only 50% accurate with acute cases. And that's like one of the few things you can get doctors to agree upon how inaccurate Lyme disease testing is. And yet still, we get tossed to and fro from appointment to appointment, most of them completely useless. The low-level laser therapy on my shoulder's helping, so that one's not. It's quite weird. This thing was almost frozen about a month or two ago, a couple months now. But as I started to get this, and you can see my other videos, swollen lymph nodes all the way up to new lesions on the back of my head with nodules underneath. Doctor saw it and documented it, thankfully. I'd like to see this thing through and help Western medicine help save our lives. But when you have infectious disease treating you that horribly, and even what's even worse is psychiatry, wow. What, my delusions decided to jump back and infect my son and give me disfiguring, deep cystic like acne for 13 to 15 years, something like that. I'd have to redo the math. I have only known about the word Morgellons and the term of that for 2 years. Even though I had a year of those symptoms observed by my doctor, that was the one that told me about it. And she didn't believe it was psychiatric. What are you calling my doctor a nut job too? Okay. Whatever. She's not. She's actually John Hopkins graduate. This is just out of control and ridiculous. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. What's going on with coronavirus? What's even more heartbreaking is the denial of our medical industry, but maybe that will show some people really just how bad things are and how they basically try to just ignore things until they go away. Well, it doesn't work that way with chronic Lyme. It hasn't worked that way with me. My family would love for it to work that way, but that's maybe my parents that are supporting me. As for my other siblings, they couldn't give a rat's ass about my life, obviously. They tried to when they wanted to, call me in for a welfare check call that caused a frozen shoulder, which is really weird. That didn't heal with no other injury for 2 years. They wanted to call me in as suicidal. They cared enough to make a phone call that was totally off base, and I was just too sick with Lyme disease, these co-infections and herxing, trying to get myself better, which psychiatry will get on your case for what? Taking care of your body? Okay, whatever. Call me delusional for taking care of my body and stuff all these years. This video is just getting way off track, but I don't know. I'll post it anyway. I'm sorry. I'm super desperate for just a couple IGeneX labs, and I don't want to make this all about me. The only reason I've lived through this was to raise awareness so other people don't have to go through it for my daughter's life. And those that will end up suffering from this. If you're new to this, oh man, I'm sorry. Just keep researching and prepare yourself for a real big fight and hang in there. I don't know what to say, but if you can help me validate this, I believe that you will help with the fight on Lyme. I've got quite the story of what happens and quite a whole bunch of years of preceding symptoms before being told this. So sorry, I'm not going to accept your delusions because they're not delusions. 90% of this is physicality, and it's been proven by the scientific method, where unlike your psychiatric evaluation of that doesn't line up with the scientific method. Sorry. Maybe the reason that psychiatry's even had similarities to categorize things is because of what's the truth of what's coming out following the world's largest nematode study done in November of 2018. And the fact that they're finding that microbes are behind Alzheimer's, dementia, and all kinds of other mental illnesses. Sorry, psychiatry and psychiatrists. Good luck to you. I'm sure that our country will find ways to waste all of our lives and the tax dollars of people on misinformation. This video is getting way too long and nobody will watch it. I don't know who's watching my short videos either. I'm just in a desperate plea, praying for a miracle. I encourage people to share your story. It's saved my life so far. I found an angel, I found a miracle, and my rent's been paid through posting these ridiculous videos on YouTube. They're not ridiculous. What's happened to us and has been denied for so long is what's ridiculous.